The thing about family dinners at my in-laws' country house is that they're never dinners. They're productions. Julia calls it a lovely tradition. I call it an annual ego inspection with appetizers. Arthur and Edith, my in-laws, were already in full host mode when we arrived. Arthur wore that calm, expensive smile he saves for investors and people he doesn't trust. Edith had the polished warmth of a woman who can end you with a compliment. "Maasen," Edith said, dragging my name. She kissed my cheek. "So good to see you." Arthur shook my hand with two hands, like we were signing a peace treaty. "Good to have you, Mason." Julia floated in like she owned the air. Not walked, floated. She had that effect. People didn't just look at her, they made room for her with their eyes. She wore a dress that looked innocent from far away and illegal up close. Hair perfect, smile calibrated. The kind of entrance that makes other women glance at their husbands just to confirm the loyalty setting is still enabled. And yes, she was beautiful. That was never the problem. The problem was that Julia didn't just want admiration. She wanted a stage, and she wanted me as a prop. On the ride over, she did her usual warm-up routine, light stretching before the performance. "Don't be weird tonight," she said, checking her lipstick in the mirror. "My father has partners here." I kept my eyes on the road. "I'll try not to challenge anyone to a duel with a bread knife." "Mason." "What?" "You didn't specify." She sighed like I was heavy luggage. "Just smile. Be agreeable. Let me handle the conversations." "Let you handle them?" I repeated. That sounds suspiciously like a dictatorship with candles. "Don't do that sarcasm thing." "That's funny," I said. "I thought you married me for the sarcasm. It's basically my personality's only stable feature." She turned to me, smile sharpening. "I married you because you were useful." I nodded. "Great. If I'm useful, I'll keep functioning. Like a high-end blender. You always have to make it a joke. And you always have to make it a lesson," I said. So here we are. Inside, the dining room was a museum exhibit titled, "We Are Absolutely Fine." Long table, tall candle, crystal glasses, cutlery that looks like it has a personal trainer. 15 guests, give or take, relatives, old friends, business partners, and a few people I'm convinced only exist inside spreadsheets. As soon as we entered, Julia went into her role. Hand on my arm, the affectionate wife, the elegant couple. She introduced me like she was reading from a brochure. "And this is my husband Mason," she said with that sweet public smile. "He's been so busy lately." Busy. That word. Said like it meant occupied but not important. People nodded politely. Men sized me up. Women evaluated whether I looked worthy of Julia's genetic lottery win. I smiled back like a civil adult. Because when you're around people like this, the room is always watching. And if you're smart, you let them watch what you want them to see. Dinner started with small talk and expensive appetizers. Arthur made a toast about family, success, tradition, words that taste different depending on who's saying them and what they're hiding. Julia's hand rested lightly on my thigh under the table, not affectionate, territorial, like she was checking her grip. I looked at her and gave her my nicest smile, the one that says, "Of course, darling." She squeezed once, a warning. Across the table, Arthur's partner, some guy in a suit that cost more than my first car, leaned toward me. "Mason, Arthur tells me you've been doing some consulting work?" Julia jumped in before I could breathe. "Oh, he dabbles," she said brightly. "But he's more of a hands-on type. I'm the one who handles the big picture strategy." I turned my head slowly. "Dabbles," I repeated. She held my gaze with that perfect smile. "Yes, dabbles." The guy chuckled the way people chuckle when they're not sure if they've just heard a joke or watched someone get carefully put in their place. I chewed my food and let it pass, not because I couldn't respond, because I didn't need to. Not yet. As the evening warmed up, wine poured, laughs got easier, Julia got bolder. Attention does that to her. It's like feeding a fire. She gets brighter, louder, and more convinced she's the sun. Someone praised a charity event she organized. Julia leaned back, glowing. It was a nightmare, she said, in that charming way where she pretends she suffered for greatness. Honestly, if I didn't manage things, nothing in this family would function. Mason tries, bless him. Edith smiled. Julia has always been capable. Julia took that as fuel and turned to the table like she was about to do stand-up. You know what Mason did last week? She asked, laughing before the punchline even existed. He tried to fix the kitchen sink. A few people leaned in. Social predators smell entertainment. I took a sip of water and waited. He watched one video online, she continued, and suddenly he thought he was a plumber. 30 minutes later, there's water everywhere, and he's standing there like... She widened her eyes and made my helpless face. And he goes, I think I made it worse. The table laughed. Not cruelly, yet. The laugh of people who want to feel included. Julia basked in it. I had to call someone, as usual, because if I don't handle things, we all drown. More laughter. I nodded once, politely, like I was hearing a story about a stranger. It's funny watching someone reshape you in public. She didn't describe me, she edited me. She took real moments and recut them so I looked smaller. Like a man in her shadow. Like her success was a lighthouse and I was a shipwreck she rescued out of charity. And the worst part? She did it smoothly enough that people accepted it as fact. Arthur chuckled politely. Edith gave me a sympathetic look, like I was a golden retriever that had peed on a rug. I smiled. Yeah, I said calmly. The sink survived. I'm proud of it. Julia tilted her head. See? Jokes. That's what he does. Humor instead of competence. The air shifted. Subtle but there. Julia's cousin, young, smug, with a laugh that sounded like a ringtone, grinned. Come on, Mason. What else did you break recently? Julia laughed too quickly. Don't encourage him. He'll start telling his work stories and pretend they matter. I turned to her. Pretend? She waved a hand. Mason, please. This is grown-up company. Oh, there it was. Not a joke anymore. A small, deliberate cut, delivered in front of the right people. Grown-up company. Meaning, not you. Arthur tried to redirect. Julia, Mason's work does matter. He's been helpful. Julia's smile didn't move, but her eyes did. Dad, she said like she was soothing him. I know you want to be kind, but let's be honest. Mason isn't exactly decisive. Without me, he'd still be considering options while the world moves on. A ripple of laughter, smaller now, uneasier. Julia leaned forward, voice playful but cutting. I mean, he's a nice man, very safe. But if we're talking about male decisions, she made a little gesture, like she was weighing something light. He's not really built for that. Then she looked at Arthur, almost challenging him. Without my advice, she said louder, Mason can't make a single masculine decision. Silence landed briefly like a fork dropped on marble. Someone laughed a little too loudly to break it. My chest didn't tighten. My face didn't change. I didn't do what she expected. No embarrassment, no defensive joke, no pleading smile. Because I wasn't surprised. This wasn't a spontaneous slip. This was Julia being Julia in a room that rewarded her for being sharp. She'd been doing this for years, small humiliations, public jokes, private corrections, making me the punchline so she could be the point. The only difference tonight was she'd gotten comfortable enough to say the quiet part out loud. And she said it in front of her father. Arthur's expression froze for half a second. Edith's eyes flicked to Julia, then to me, like she was calculating the blast radius. Julia didn't notice. She was too busy enjoying the sound of her own authority. I set my fork down gently. No drama, no clatter. I lifted my glass, took a slow sip, and let the room sit in the moment. Then I put the glass down with a soft click, and I looked at Julia, not with anger. With a calm, measured look I usually reserve for reading contracts. Her smile faltered, just a millimeter, because she felt it. That shift, The moment when the room changes temperature. "Julia," I said, quiet enough that people had to stop pretending not to listen. "I've let you talk because I respected your face in front of your parents." Her eyes narrowed. "Mason." "No," I said softly, the same tone you use when you stop a dog from chewing a wire. "Let me finish." "You've mistaken my patience for weakness," I continued, "and I'll take responsibility for that. I trained you." Her lips parted, offended and confused. "Trained?" I nodded. "Yeah. When you reward a behavior long enough, it grows. Congratulations, you grew it." A couple of guests shifted in their seats. Arthur's hand tightened around his napkin. Julia gave a thin laugh. "Oh my God, are you doing a speech?" "Not a speech," I said. "A correction." Her eyes flashed. "Stop. You're embarrassing me." I smiled slightly. "I know, that's the point. Because you've been embarrassing me for years. The only difference is I'm not asking permission." Arthur cleared his throat. "Mason," I turned to him respectfully. "Arthur, I'm not here to disrespect you. I'm here to stop disrespecting myself." Then I looked back at Julia. "If you want to lay the cards on the table," I said, still calm, "we can do it right here, in front of everyone you perform for." Julia's face tightened. "What cards?" "Mason, you're being dramatic." I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and took out my phone. Not dramatically. No sudden movements. Just calm. I placed it on the table in front of me and tapped the screen once. The glow lit my face for a second. Julia stared at it like it had just betrayed her. "Mason," she said, her voice lowering half a tone. "What are you doing?" I didn't look away from her. "I'm about to show everyone," I said evenly, "what you've been hiding behind my silence." And for the first time that night, she didn't look amused. She looked alert. I didn't raise my voice. That's the thing about control. You don't need volume when you have timing. I turned the phone slightly so the screen faced Julia first. Not the table, not her father. Her. She leaned in instinctively. The confidence was still there, but it had developed a crack. "Mason," she whispered, teeth clenched in a smile, "don't be ridiculous." "I'm rarely ridiculous," I replied. "You usually handle that part." A couple of guests shifted. Arthur's eyes narrowed, not in anger yet, in calculation. On the screen was a simple banking dashboard. Clean, minimal, brutally factual. I tapped once. A transaction history appeared. Then another tap. A transfer log. Then another. A summary sheet I had compiled weeks ago, neat and painfully chronological. "You remember when you said you rescued the family from drowning because I couldn't fix a sink?" I asked lightly. Julia straightened. "Mason, this is not the time." "It's actually perfect timing," I said, "since we're discussing who keeps things afloat." I looked at Arthur respectfully. "Arthur, I didn't want to do this in your house, but I also didn't want the narrative to stay fictional." Julia's hand shot toward my phone. I moved it just slightly out of reach. "Careful," I said softly. "This is grown-up company." The cousin across the table choked on his drink. Julia's face flushed. "What is this? You're being insane." "No," I said calmly. "Prepared." I turned the phone outward so the table could see. 3 years ago, I continued almost conversationally, Julia decided to diversify her portfolio. Arthur blinked. "Diversify?" "Yes," I nodded. "Cryptocurrency, 2 boutique startups, and that wellness brand that promised anti-aging smoothies." A few confused looks. Julia tried to laugh. "Oh my God, that was a tiny investment." $48,000, I corrected gently. Tiny is subjective. Arthur's jaw tightened slightly. Julia's voice sharpened. "That money came from our joint—" "Yes," I interrupted. And then it vanished. Silence. I tapped again. "Here," I said. "This is the account where I covered the shortfall so your parents wouldn't see the withdrawal spike." Edith looked at Arthur. Arthur didn't blink. Julia's breathing changed, just slightly. "That's normal," she said quickly. Investments fluctuate. Absolutely, I agreed. They fluctuate, then they fail. Then someone quietly pays the difference so the house still looks stable. I leaned back slightly. You remember that bonus you celebrated last winter? I asked her. Her eyes flashed. Yes. That wasn't a bonus, I said. That was me liquidating a personal position to cover your second startup collapse. A low murmur rolled across the table. Julia shook her head. This is manipulation. You're twisting numbers. I love numbers, I said calmly. They don't twist. People do. Arthur finally spoke. His voice was slow, deliberate. Julia, is this accurate? Julia looked at him, and for the first time that evening, she didn't look in control. Dad, it's being exaggerated. Am I exaggerating the wire transfers? I asked gently. Or the credit line I refinanced so the bank wouldn't call you directly? Her eyes snapped back to me. You refinanced without telling me. Yes, I said evenly. Because I was busy being indecisive. The sarcasm landed clean. A few guests actually looked down at the table. I scrolled further. Here's my favorite part, I said lightly. The charity gala that everyone praised. Julia stiffened. The event that proved your strategic genius. It was successful, she shot back. It was, I nodded. Because I negotiated the vendor contracts after you overspent by 30%. Arthur's gaze moved slowly from her to me. Julia's voice rose. That's partnership. Partnership is when both people know what's happening, I said. Not when one person cleans up quietly and the other tells stories about drowning husbands. The cousin across the table had stopped smiling entirely. Edith folded her hands. Julia tried to regain altitude. So what? You helped. That's what a husband does. Yes, I agreed. He helps. He supports. He protects. I leaned forward slightly. But he does not exist to be publicly downsized for entertainment. Silence pressed heavier now. Arthur's voice came again, lower this time. How much? I didn't look away from Julia. Total exposure? I said. Just over 217,000. The number landed like a glass set down too hard. Julia's breath caught. That's not... It is, I said gently. Including interest. Arthur's face lost color. Not dramatically. Just enough. Edith finally spoke. Julia, why didn't we know? Julia's composure cracked at the edges. Because I handled it. You didn't, I said calmly. I did. She turned toward me fully now, abandoning the social smile entirely. You think this makes you powerful? She hissed. No, I said. It makes me accurate. Arthur stood up slowly. No yelling, no theatrics. Just a man realizing the narrative he'd been sold wasn't complete. You told us, he said to Julia, that the volatility was market-wide. It was. Mason, Arthur continued, eyes steady. You covered this personally? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? I held his gaze. Because I didn't want you to think your daughter married a man who exposes her weaknesses to win arguments. A couple of guests exhaled quietly. Julia looked like she'd been slapped without being touched. You're enjoying this, she said, voice trembling between anger and disbelief. I considered that honestly. No, I said. I'm finishing it. She laughed bitterly. You waited. You waited for a stage. Yes, I said simply, because you chose the stage. That landed harder than any number. Arthur looked at his daughter differently now. Not like a shining success, like a liability. Julia noticed it too. That was the real shift. You called me ballast, I said quietly, but I've been the one keeping the boat level. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at Julia. The performance was over, and for the first time that night, she wasn't the main character. I stood slowly. I didn't come here to destroy anything, I said calmly. I came here to stop being rewritten. I looked at Arthur. My respect for you hasn't changed. Then I looked at Julia. But the terms have. And that was the moment she realized this wasn't a scene she could edit. It was a consequence she had to face. Arthur didn't yell. Men like Arthur don't explode. He looked at Julia for a long second, not angry, not shocked, just recalculating. Edith reached for her water glass but didn't drink. Julia tried to recover posture, chin up, shoulders back, controlled breathing. I'd seen that version before, the one she uses when she realizes the script slipped. This is being dramatized, she said carefully. Mason is framing this to make himself look heroic. I tilted my head. Heroic? No. Accountable. Arthur finally spoke. Julia, did you tell us everything? She hesitated. That half-second pause said more than any spreadsheet. It wasn't necessary, she said. Arthur's jaw tightened. Financial exposure of that size is necessary. She looked at him like she'd just been betrayed by gravity. Dad, I handled it. You didn't, he said quietly. He did. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone, I said evenly, but I'm not going to sit quietly while I'm reduced to comic relief. Julia stood too, anger finally overtaking strategy. You think walking out makes you strong? She snapped. No, I said calmly. Walking out means I'm finished participating. Arthur stepped slightly aside as I moved past him. Mason, he said. I stopped. Thank you, he added quietly. I nodded once. I respect you. That hasn't changed. Julia's voice followed me like a thrown glass. You're overreacting. This is pathetic. I paused at the doorway and turned back just enough to meet her eyes. No, I said. This is overdue. And then I left. The night air outside felt different, cleaner, not because the world had changed, but because I had stopped negotiating with it. I got into my car, phone buzzing already. Julia, declined. Julia again, declined. Then a message. You've embarrassed me beyond repair. I stared at it for a moment, then replied, no. I corrected the record. I drove to a hotel 15 minutes away. Nothing dramatic. Not some neon-lit exile. Just a quiet place. At midnight, Arthur called. Mason, I owe you an apology. You don't, I said. It wasn't your behavior. Silence. Then, I spoke with Julia. I assumed you would. She did not present the situation accurately to us. That's one way to phrase it. He exhaled slowly. I was not aware of the full exposure. I know. And I was not aware, he continued, that you had covered it personally. I didn't want you choosing sides over numbers. I am not choosing sides, he said firmly. I am choosing facts. I won't defend what she said tonight. She crossed a line. Yes. You intend to leave her? Arthur asked. I intend to stop tolerating behavior that makes me smaller, I replied. That is not the same answer. No, I agreed. It isn't. He cleared his throat. She believes you staged this. I did. Silence. But not for revenge, I continued. For correction. I told her, Arthur said slowly, that if she continues down this path, she risks losing more than reputation. That landed. I didn't respond immediately. She has never been challenged like this, he admitted. I know. She asked me if you would meet her. I know she was wrong, but please give your family a chance. Okay, but on my terms, I said. Neutral location. And this is not a reconciliation dinner. When? He asked. Tomorrow afternoon. I'll inform her. There was one last pause. Mason. Yes. You handled yourself with restraint. I appreciate it. Good night, Arthur. Good night. I hung up and placed the phone on the nightstand. The room was quiet. No audience, no performance, just me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like background music. The next afternoon, we met in a private lounge inside a business hotel downtown. Neutral, clean, no candles, no family portraits. Julia arrived 10 minutes late. Power move. Or at least she thought it was. She walked in wearing black. Minimal makeup, controlled expression, the polished version of remorse. She sat across from me, didn't smile. "Are you done?" she asked. "With what?" "The theatrics." I leaned back slightly. "This isn't theater. You humiliated me." "You humiliated yourself," I replied calmly. "I just removed the curtain." Her jaw tightened. "You could have talked to me privately." "I did," I said, "for years." "That's not true." "It is. You just didn't consider my objections relevant." Silence. She looked at me differently now. Not amused, not dismissive, assessing. "You planned this," she said. "Yes." "How long?" "Long enough." She leaned back. "You think this makes you dominant?" There it was. The framing she understood. Power. "No," I said evenly. "It makes me unwilling." "To what?" "To be managed." That word landed. Her fingers tapped lightly against the table. Old habit when she recalculates. "So what now?" she asked. "Now," I said calmly. "We either set new terms or get a divorce." She gave a cold half-smile. "You're giving me terms?" "Yes." She laughed once, short, sharp. "This should be interesting." I didn't smile. "First," I said evenly, "zero tolerance for public disrespect. One more comment designed to reduce me socially, and I file." Her expression flickered. "Second, financial transparency, full access, no unilateral decisions." She opened her mouth to object. I raised a hand slightly, not aggressive, just final. "Third, public correction." Her eyes narrowed. "Meaning, you will clarify, publicly, that your indecisive husband has been managing financial exposure you failed to disclose." Her breathing changed again. "You want me to humiliate myself?" "No," I said calmly. "I want you to rebalance perception." Silence stretched. "You're serious," she said quietly. "Yes." "And if I refuse?" "Then we proceed with divorce." No raised voice, no anger, just consequence. She stared at me for a long time, trying to find hesitation, trying to find the old version of me. She didn't. "You've changed," she said finally. "No," I replied. I stopped shrinking. That landed deeper than anything else. And for the first time since I'd known her, Julia didn't have a prepared response. She searched my face for hesitation again. There wasn't any. Not because I hated her. Because I was done negotiating my own size. She leaned back slowly, exhaled, and for the first time since she sat down, she stopped posturing. "You really would end it," she said quietly. "Yes." Her eyes moved over my face like she was trying to find the old version of me. The one who would soften first, laugh first, apologize first, just to restore balance. She didn't find him. "You changed the rules without telling me," she said. "I stopped playing by the wrong ones," I replied. She let out a dry breath that almost passed for a laugh. "You ambushed me in my father's house." "You chose the battlefield," I said. "I just stopped being the target." Silence sat between us. Not hostile, not warm, just real. A waitress passed quietly, refilling water glasses. Neither of us touched them. Julia's posture shifted again. Not defensive this time. Measured. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I correct it publicly, it changes how they see me. Yes. They'll question me. Yes. They'll doubt my judgment. They already should have." Her eyes flashed, but it wasn't anger. It was impact. "You're ruthless," she said. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm finished being patient." She held my gaze for a long moment. "You enjoyed exposing me?" "No." That landed. Really landed. Her expression shifted. Not defeated, not broken, but aware. "You know what the worst part is?" she said quietly. "What?" "I didn't think you'd ever do this." "I know." Her fingers traced the edge of the table absent-mindedly. "You've always been stable," she said. "Predictable. Reliable," I corrected. "And I thought," she admitted, That because you didn't fight back publicly, you couldn't. I could, I said. I chose not to. Why now? Because something inside me had shifted from endurance to boundary. Because patience without respect becomes erosion. Because I was tired of laughing at jokes about myself to keep the peace. But I didn't say all that. I just said, because I don't want to become someone I resent. Silence again. This time it wasn't sharp. It was heavy. She straightened slightly. You want a public correction? She said. Not an apology. Correct. You want me to say that you handled the financial exposure? Yes. And that my comment about you being indecisive was unfair? Yes. And after that? She asked. After that, we rebuild with clarity. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. You know my father, she said. He won't forget this. I know. You changed how he sees me. No, I said calmly. You did. I just provided context. That hurt her more than accusation would have. She swallowed. And if I do this, she asked carefully, you won't keep punishing me for it? I'm not interested in punishment, I said. I'm interested in balance. Another long pause. Then, very quietly, I went too far. I didn't interrupt. I liked the room laughing, she continued. I liked being the stronger one. I know. And I didn't realize, she stopped, that I was shrinking you to feel taller. There it was, no performance, no deflection, just truth. You were, I said evenly. Her eyes lifted to mine. I don't want to lose this, she said. This what? You, the structure, the life. Then don't treat it like a stage. Silence. Then she nodded. Once. Sharp. Decided. Fine, she said. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't romantic. It was agreement. I'll do it, she added. I studied her carefully. You understand that this isn't about humiliation. Yes. It's about correction. Yes. And if it happens again, it won't, she said quickly. I held her gaze. She corrected herself. If it happens again, you leave. Yes. She nodded again. The old Julia would have fought harder. The old me would have softened faster. Neither of us did. I stood. She stood too. For a second, we just looked at each other. Just two adults standing at the edge of something redefined. As we walked toward the exit together, not touching, not separated, I realized something important. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, and that was better. A week later, in her parents' living room, smaller circle, controlled setting, Julia stood up before dessert. Her voice was calm, measured. I owe Mason a clarification, she said. My comment about him being indecisive was unfair. The room stilled. Mason has handled financial matters I should have disclosed sooner, including losses that he personally covered. There were no jokes this time. No sparkle, just information. She turned slightly toward me. And I misrepresented his role publicly. That was wrong. Silence. Arthur nodded once. Edith's expression softened. No applause, no drama, just recalibration. Later that night, as we drove home, Julia looked straight ahead at the road. You got what you wanted, she said. Yes. You feel powerful? No. Then what do you feel? I thought about it. Respected. She was quiet for the rest of the drive. When we got home, she didn't perform affection. She didn't test me with a joke. She didn't reach for control. She just said quietly, I won't do that again. I know, I said. And this time, I meant it. Not because I trusted her blindly, but because she finally understood something she never had before. I wasn't ballast. I was the structure. And I would never shrink to fit someone else's spotlight again. A year later, no one laughs when Julia makes a joke about me. Not because she stopped being funny, because she stopped using me as the punchline. It's subtle. The change. If you didn't know us before, you wouldn't see it. But I do. The first real test happened 3 months after that dinner. We were at another event, smaller, less theatrical. Someone made a comment about who really runs the house. Old Julia would have smirked. Instead, she said calmly, "We do. And Mason handles more than people realize." No wink, no edge, just correction. The room adjusted. So did she. Financially, everything is transparent now. Shared dashboards, shared decisions, no hidden visionary side projects that mysteriously require emergency stabilization. Ironically, she makes better decisions now. Not because I control them, because she knows someone's not quietly absorbing the impact anymore. Arthur treats me differently too. Not warmer, clearer. There's weight in his handshake now. Not evaluation, acknowledgement. Once, over whiskey, he said, "You handled that correctly." That was his version of a speech. Julia still commands rooms. That hasn't changed. But now, when she introduces me, it sounds different. "And this is my husband, Mason," she says. "He's the reason our structure doesn't wobble." It's not grand, it's not romantic, it's accurate. We argue sometimes. We're not saints. But the tone shifted. There's no more public resizing, no more performance dominance. If tension rises in a room, she feels it first now, and adjusts, not out of fear, out of awareness. And me? I don't scan rooms anymore to see if I'm about to be edited. I don't rehearse defense in my head. I don't laugh at jokes that cost me respect. There's a steadiness now. Not loud, not theatrical, just stable. Last week, we were at her parents' house again. Same long table, same crystal glasses. Someone brought up that infamous sink story. Julia smiled slightly. "Yes," she said, glancing at me. "And he fixed it." The table chuckled lightly. I looked at her. She held my gaze. And this time, we were on the same side of the joke. Not because I won, but because we finally understood the difference between being admired and being respected. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.